Hey everybody, this is One Seed, One World, and my name is Todd. I was originally going to film this out in the chicken coop, but a rooster, Doug, a little bantam rooster that we have, decided that he wanted to be on the video too and started crowing quite incessantly. So I decided to come film this in the greenhouse. So what is going on with the egg prices? Egg prices have been insane recently, which I'm sure most of you know. And there's all kinds of theories that are going on about maybe what is causing all the issues between the egg prices, the avian flu, chickens not laying, collusion among egg companies to jack up prices, all kinds of stuff. So today I just wanted to kind of weigh in on this a little bit and give you guys some information on what my research has come up with, and then you can kind of make your own decision from there. So let's talk first about egg production in the United States. Number one, there's about 21 states that handle the egg production for the U.S., the bulk of it that goes to your grocery stores. I'm not talking about homesteaders and, you know, all of us that are just backyard chicken raisers. I'm talking about the stuff that you see in the grocery stores. Out of those 21 states, there's really three main states, but we'll talk about the top five, but there's three main states that kind of cover the bulk of that. So number one is Iowa. Iowa handles 15% of the egg production. Then Ohio and Indiana both cover another 9% each. And then they're followed up by Pennsylvania and then Texas. So those are the top five states that handle the egg production for the eggs that you buy in your grocery stores. Now, what can kind of happen is that if different states are affected by things, then that might have an effect on whether our egg prices go up or down, right? Because it's kind of all conglomerated or stuck in these maybe smaller areas. And it's not as, you know, when things are more widespread, you can kind of balance out some catastrophes if one area is hit. But when you have it kind of all stuck mainly in some of these areas, then when things happen, we bear the brunt of that, right? So let's talk about the avian flu. Avian flu has shown up with a force this year. The last time we had a big avian flu was that had a major effect on egg prices and egg production was back in 2015. In 2015, you know, a lot of birds had to be culled, a lot of big companies were affected, and prices went up. In fact, in 2015, the prices went up the most since 1973. That was 2015 was quite a hit. Now at that time, a dozen eggs in the store was probably running about $1.29 average, I think. And then when that avian flu hit and all these birds had to be culled, a lot of egg layers were lost. The prices went up anywhere from about 60% to over 100%. So prices jumped from about $1.29 to all the way up to over $2.50 per dozen in some places. It all depended on your location and whatnot. But that was quite a big increase. But even $2.50 a dozen is not bad in today's standards. That seems to be pretty cheap, especially with this year, where if you go in the grocery store, I mean, in my area, they're running anywhere from $5.69 a dozen to up to, I think, like, depending on what you're buying, $7, $8 a dozen. In other states, you know, some of you might be paying $10 a dozen. And then even with those prices, a lot of the stores are sold out. You go into the into the grocery store, and their egg section could be empty. Now, we haven't seen that here, but I have seen some reports and pictures of that where people can't even buy eggs, even at these exorbitant prices. So avian flu seems to have had a major effect on our egg prices this year. Now, why is that? Well, let's look again back at the top states that produce our eggs. Iowa, which produces 15% of all of the eggs in the U.S. for grocery stores, had to cull over 25 million birds this past year because of avian flu. That's 40% of their egg layers in that state. So the top producing state lost 40% of their egg layers. And the other states were affected as well. Pennsylvania, which was number 4 on the list, had to cull 1.4 or over 1.4 million birds. So when you are removing these amount of birds out of the system, that's going to increase or reduce the productivity, and then of course demand goes up, and that's cause and effect. You got less product, and you still have the same or more amount of demand, prices go up. And when you add on the other things that we've been dealing with, logistic issues that is left over from the pandemic, and inflation and a lot of other things, we're being affected a lot harder than we were back in 2015. And so to me, that's a big reason on why egg prices have gone up so much. There's a lot of other theories out there on that other things that could be causing it that I'm not going to get too much into. I just try to look at the straight data and make my decision from there. But to me, that makes sense that we've lost a lot of birds this year. Over 50 million birds have been killed in the U.S., culled or otherwise because of the avian flu. And that's going to have a major impact on the amount of eggs that are available, and hence prices go up. Then you add on top of that is that there are 4 major companies that handle eggs in these states. And let's look at the top 4. So the top 4 egg company or egg producers for eggs in the United States are Cal-Maine Foods, which have 46.7 million egg layers. Now, I was not able to find any articles or details about if they were affected by the avian flu or not. In fact, the one article I was able to find said that they were not affected and did not have to cull any birds. Now, whether that's changed since that article was written, which was a few months ago, I couldn't find any details. Number 2, Roseacre Farms, 27.59 million layers is what they have. They were affected. I was able to find details on them. They had to cull 1.5 million birds because some of their facilities where they kept their chickens were affected, and they had to kill off all these birds. Number 3 is Hillendale Farms. So Hillendale Farm, 20 million. I did see that some of their facilities were affected, but I could not find details on how many birds they had to cull. And then the final one is Versova Holdings, LLC, which has 19.9 million and egg layers, and I couldn't find any details on how they were affected either. I don't know if there just wasn't any articles done, or if they kind of keep that information hush-hush, because they don't want to alarm anybody. I don't know. With these different ones, I couldn't find a lot of details on. But you've got 4 main companies in 5 main states. They've got facilities, but you got 5 main states that cover a large portion of our egg production for grocery stores, and then 4 companies that also handle that. So that's the first thing to think about. And then, there's other theories about the collusion. Like, I read one article is that, these different large egg producers got together and decided they were going to jack up their egg prices and use different excuses. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know if that's a thing. And then there is other theories about, the avian flu isn't really as bad as what they're making it out to be, and they're just using this as a scare tactic so they can jack up prices. Maybe, maybe not. I know with like the homesteading community and sustainability, all of us people, we don't always have the biggest amount of trust when it comes to what they tell us, either on the news or from corporations or the government, because we've been lied to a lot, and so we are less trustworthy even when different reports and articles and stories come out. We're just like, they're lying to us. I'm not saying me personally, but it seems to be like a general consensus overall that we don't always believe all the data that we're given. There's always the possibility that something else could be going on. I personally don't subscribe to a lot of the theories. I don't want to throw the word necessarily conspiracy out there just because it gives it a negative connotation. And I think that we should always question on what, the corporations that we buy from, our politicians, all that kind, what the news tells us. I think it's always healthy to question these things and do our own research. But at the same time, I'm not a proponent of going down the rabbit hole and immediately jumping on all these different things. There's a lot of other YouTube channels out there that are way larger than mine that are really kind of hitting hard on some of these theories they kind of bring across that it's fact. And I'm not one of those that's going to tell you that, and I'm not one that's necessarily going to believe that. I will question things, but I'm going to look at more hard, specific data instead of random websites, TikTok videos, and YouTubers that just give you this story about how this company's doing this, or these companies, or the government's doing that. I'm not going to jump in on all of that. All right, so that's kind of like the basic overview. The second thing I wanted to cover is the whole thing with the chicken feed. Right now there's different stories going around that Tractor Supply has changed their formula, or the company that they get their chicken feed from has changed their formula that has made it so that backyard chickens, people that like myself and maybe some of you out there that have backyard chickens and buy these bags of feed, either something has been put into the feed to make them stop laying or has been taken out of it to make them stop laying. There's different theories there. I cannot comment on that because I don't buy the Tractor Supply brands that are in question. There's different people that said, well, I was buying this brand and for the last 10 years, or 20 years, or 30 years, I've been raising chickens, never had a problem. And all of a sudden this year, my chickens aren't laying. And then I switched my feed, and now they're laying again. So, there could be some truth to that, but that's not like peer-reviewed scientific data to me. There's so many different things that can affect your chickens laying eggs, and so maybe there is something to it. But because I don't use that brand, I can't comment from my experience. For me here, I have been using a Purina brand organic feed for my chickens, and my chickens have barely been laying. But there's a lot of other things that can affect your chickens laying, and I attribute mine to that over the feed. And let's talk about those couple of things. Number one, it's wintertime. Starting in the fall, especially after your first season with chickens, once they get to be about 2 years old, every fall and winter your chickens are going to drop in the amount of eggs that they lay, and some might not lay at all, and they might not lay at all for 2 or 3 months. Chickens need about 14 hours of daylight to lay eggs on the regular. You don't get that in the fall and winter. So you got less light, and it's normal for chickens not to lay a whole lot of eggs or to stop laying completely in the wintertime. Also in the fall, the next part is going into their second year. Your hens, well, even your roosters, your chickens are going to start molting. So, and they start shedding all these feathers and putting on this new coat. I know it's ridiculous that they do this in the fall right before it gets cold out. I have a video that I'll put a link below where I talk more in depth about molting. But they will molt and then put on new feathers. So their bodies are taking the nutrients that they're getting in their feed, especially like protein and calcium, to make new feathers, to grow out new feathers. And they're not putting those nutrients into making eggs for you. They're making it into getting refeathered. So you got molting and you got wintertime. So your egg production is going to drop way off. Next thing is the age of your chickens. I've got half of my chickens are almost 4 years old. At that point, they've kind of laid probably the bulk of their eggs, because chickens are born with only a certain amount. Every chicken's only born with a certain amount of eggs they're going to lay. And so some people will put like lights in their coops and stuff to keep egg production going through the winter, which that might help you on the now, but it's not going to help you for the future, because you're just speeding up the process on when that hen is going to be out of eggs. It's going to be done laying. I'd rather let the chickens have the rest. I don't use lights, and let them lay throughout whatever their lifespan of eggs are going to be, instead of trying to rush it through in the wintertime. But you might have a different take on that. But I just kind of like let nature take its course. So we've got winter, we've got molting, we've got the amount of eggs that they lay, the age of the chicken. And then the final thing is chickens can be affected by different diseases or parasites or mites and those kinds of things, which can affect their egg laying, or even stress. If the chickens are stressed out about certain things, if they've got mites, they're not going to lay as much. If they're stressed, they're not going to lay as much. If they, like I've had with my flock, if you've seen any of my previous videos, been dealing with mycoplasma. Mycoplasma reduces egg laying. If the chickens have worms, they might not lay as much. And if they're not getting enough nutrients, so that's where the feed comes in. You know, if there was a change in feed, then maybe they're not getting enough nutrients to lay eggs properly. But you can always supplement their feed with table scraps, their own eggshells, leftover meat, macaroni and cheese. I mean, chickens will pretty much tear through most anything. There are some things that you shouldn't feed them, and you can Google those things. But a lot of stuff from your kitchen, you can feed those leftover scraps to the chickens, and they love it and will tear it up. For the past week or so, we've been giving the chickens some hot meals in the morning because it's been cold, and we mix in like some dry cat food, oatmeal, leftover burger, maybe some vegetables mixed in, rice. We kind of throw in to kind of supplement their feed. It's a warm meal to kind of help warm them up and maybe fatten them up, and it might help increase the egg laying as well. So that, you know, there's things that you can do. So all kinds of things seem to be affecting chickens this year, but I just want you to understand kind of from the grocery store perspective, what might be the real effect with this avian flu, and how you know, our egg production for grocery stores is very centered for the most part. You know, bulk of it comes from a certain area, and if those areas are impacted, it's going to affect our prices. And there's a lot of other outside things like the logistics and the inflation and other stuff that I've mentioned that's hitting us much harder this year. And then from a backyard chicken raiser's perspective, and feed and whatnot, you know, you got to look at wintertime, age, disease, feed. You know, there's a lot of things that you have to kind of take in consideration as well that could affect your egg laying. And I'm kind of waiting to see as spring kicks in, you know, if egg production comes up, because I haven't been changing my feed out from what I've been using. I have been supplementing their food from here and there and let them free range when I can. I don't let them out of they have a 500 square foot run coop, but there's not a whole lot for them to free range on in there because they've already kind of eaten everything that's been in there. But because we have hawks pretty bad around here, I don't free range them out in the garden and whatnot unless I'm out here with them, which I tend to do less of in the wintertime just because it's cold outside and I don't feel like just standing around waiting for the chickens to scratch around. But they get out from time to time. So I'm waiting for spring to kind of see what happens. I've already noticed though, just because now that we're going into February, days are slightly longer. My chickens I have one or two that were not laying that are now laying again. And as days go on, I expect, if I don't have issues with other things, that maybe we'll get more as it goes on. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, I know this was kind of a long video, and if you've made it this far, I appreciate you sticking with me. I hope some of that information was helpful and that it made you think. And my only thing is, don't just run down the rabbit holes of a lot of these other theories of things that could be going on, because I'm not always so convinced that that's what the case may be. There's a lot of other elements that can affect the laying of your hens. And just take good care of your chickens and they will take care of you. But whatever's going on in your neck of the woods, I hope it is going fantastic for you, and I hope that your chickens are happy and healthy and having a good winter. Spring is not that far away. We will see you again soon. Have a great day. Namaste.